And when this had come to pass, I did not follow after my rabbi as the other disciples did, but I stayed there to hear the sentence which the court would pronounce and what they would say. And Eleazar, the son of Judah, who was of the party and family of the high priest, said, "We are all witnesses, and we have heard the words of this man. He meriteth punishment not for his deeds, but for his words. For he hath blasphemed against the tradition which is not written in the Torah, and we know not what the punishment is therefore. But in that he hath diminished the honor of the sages, and trodden upon the good name of those that study the law, it is as if he had spoken shamefully of all the Torah. As our sages have taught, the honor of a sage is greater than the honor of an angel. Therefore I would know what this most just court shall lay as punishment upon the man that hath shamed the sages." Then rose Simon the Pharisee and spoke thus, "The honor of the sages resteth in its place, and God be our witness, that not the matter of our honor, or of the honor of our fathers' houses, concerneth us here, but the honor of God, the only one, and of his just Torah. We cannot punish the rabbi for having said that to the sages which he said, for it is a virtue to tell the truth to a man's face, the more so in a court which sitteth in judgment. And it is a virtue to say hypocrites to sages who do not that which they preach, and make a show of their devoutness before the world. For certain of our sages have done likewise, and it is written, Ye shall burn out the evil in your midst, which meaneth also the sages and scholars. Now for this there cometh no punishment to the rabbi, for he said that which he desired to say. But this thing I would know, what sentence will this most just court pronounce against him for the deeds he hath done? Most just court, it is known and accepted that Moses received the law on Sinai, and he handed it on to Joshua, and Joshua handed it on to the ancients, and the ancients handed it on to the prophets, and the prophets to the men of the great congregation, and from the hands of the men of the great congregation it came into the hands of the sages, till the days of Shemaiah and Abtalion. And Hillel served Shemaiah and Abtalion, and learned the Torah from them, and from the venerable Hillel the tradition cometh down that the washing of hands is deduced and prescribed from Moses and Sinai, and this is one of the 18 prescriptions on which the houses of Hillel and Shammai were agreed. And all this passed from our parents unto us, and we observe the commandment of the washing of hands with utter devotion, and we have made one fence after another about us. We have sought to counter the danger of impurity in our vessels, and in our food, and in our garments. Even a scroll in the sanctuary is subject to the danger of impurity, and we must wash our hands before we touch it. And wherefore do we carry with such devotion the yoke of the kingdom of heaven? And wherefore have we thus circumscribed our lives, and made heavy our burden, and drawn fence after fence about us? Hath it been for our pleasure? Hath it been for our honor, or the honor of our fathers? Nay, we have done all this that we might be sundered from the Gentiles, that we might remain a holy people and sustain the light of God. We are a small island in a sea of impurity, evil, and idol worshipping. Observe now the peoples of the world, they that rule over us. They worship sticks and stones, and call to gods that hear not and see not. They say unto the beast, Thou art my father who hast begotten me, and to the animal, Thou art my God who canst shield me from evil. And they sacrifice their children unto them, and their wives play the whore in their temples, and their men practice all manner of indecency, and the justice of God reigneth not among them. They know not God's laws. They oppress the widow, and sell the fatherless, and they enslave their people in everlasting slavery for the pleasure of their rulers. And they fill the world with a sea of sin and whoredom, so that the cry of the earth mounteth to heaven. And it is well for them, for they rule the world. and we, the guardians of the light, are in submission to them, and we are trodden underfoot. Thus we may perhaps look with a corrupted eye upon the follies of the world, and think in our hearts, mayhap, God forbid, the truth is with them, and we will imitate their deeds. And thus, God forbid, God's justice will vanish from the earth, as happened in the days of our parents, who were driven forth because of their sins, and for whose sins the temple was destroyed. But there arose prophets unto our parents, and the prophets punished them, and reminded them of the one and living God. And they would not let our parents mingle with the peoples of the world, that the light of God's word might not vanish from the earth. But in these days we have no prophets, and because of our sins the spirit of the prophets hath departed from us. But there be in their place the words of our sages and learned men, and according to the words of their mouth do we live. And they have sundered us with many fences from the people about us, and they have put up a great dividing wall between clean and unclean, and they have laid upon us the yoke of the washing of hands, so that in every moment of our lives we may remember and know that we be Jews, that we be a sanctified people of God, chosen to fulfill his commandments, to guard his Torah, and uphold his name, even until the Messiah cometh, who will fill the earth with justice, and all men will acknowledge the one living God, as the prophet hath prophesied. And it shall come to pass in the last days. Then, in the last days, all the nations will accept the God of Israel, as the prophet saith, and the peoples shall stream unto him, and many nations shall say, Come, let us go up the house of God. In that day the division that is between us and the nations shall be removed. But until that day cometh, we shall be sundered from them, for we have been dedicated to guard the light of God, as it is written, And ye shall be holy unto me. Therefore our sages have put up these fences, and he that cometh to break one of the fences, it is as if he breaketh all the laws of the Torah. And for this reason our sages have put more weight on the tradition than on the written law. The tradition is dearer unto us, for we have ourselves and of our own will made the burden heavy, and we bear it with love for his name's sake, without having been bidden. Shall we then let each one that so chooseth enter into our garden, and tread upon the beds, and go unpunished? Who is he that cometh to destroy the wall between us and them? He calleth himself Son of Man. Now, Son of Man meaneth the prophet, as it is written in Ezekiel. And Son of Man meaneth likewise the Messiah. Is he Messiah? Then where are the signs? As hath been promised, Behold, I send unto you Elijah the prophet, before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord. And there were voices heard from the people, He performeth wonders, the blind receive their sight, and the sick rise from their beds. And others called, With one word he healed my father of leprosy. And still another called, He comforted my sister, and forgave her her sins. And Simon the Pharisee answered these voices, saying, We regard not miracles, for miracles are not a proof of the Messiah. There be also black forces, forces of impurity, which God hath created to prove mankind, as the prophet hath said, He created light and made the darkness. He maketh peace and createth evil, which things the Gentiles worship from the ancient serpent onward, which brought upon us the sin of Adam, even unto the abomination of Beelzebub, the god of flies, which they of Ekron serve. They have their false prophets, and with their powers the false prophets perform miracles. But the people called out, What then is the proof of the Messiah? Tell us, for what shall we wait? We are weary of straining our eyes after him. Our parents went down dishonorably to their graves in the hope that Messiah would come. Now the everlasting pit covereth them, and we perish in need and oppression, and Messiah showeth himself not. Now tell us, for what thing shall we wait, and what is the sign and proof of the Messiah? And Simon the Pharisee answered, It is written in the Torah, there will arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he will give you a sign and will perform wonders, and the sign will be fulfilled, and he will say unto you, Come, let us follow other gods, such gods as we know not, and let us serve them. Then ye shall in no wise listen to the words of this prophet or dreamer of dreams. And they called, He biddeth us not serve other gods, but the one living God of Israel. But he biddeth you not to obey the commandments which are in the Torah, which the one living God gave to Moses for his people Israel. And he biddeth you not to have regard to the tradition of the sages, into whose hands was given the power to interpret the Torah. He that destroyeth the Torah destroyeth the covenant between God and Israel. He that denieth the Torah denieth the God of Israel. Only he may do that who proveth unto us that he is Messiah, sent of God. Only he hath the authority, and no man of flesh and blood. If he be the Messiah, why appeareth not Elijah the prophet to proclaim his coming? Why gathereth he not the host of heaven to destroy the rule of Edom? Why bringeth he not the peoples upon the holy mount, as the prophet hath prophesied? Why declareth he not this unto us? Hath he not been sent for us and unto us? But Nicodemus the son of Nicodemus said, Who saith that the Rabbi Yeshua ben Joseph is the Messiah? We have not heard it from his lips, nor have his disciples ever affirmed it. Then demanded Simon the Pharisee, But again, if he be not the Messiah and the messenger of God, why cometh he to remove the law and the division between us and the Gentiles, he that is flesh and blood? I therefore ask of this most just court that it pronounce strict sentence against the Rabbi Yeshua ben Joseph, who destroyeth the tradition which hath been transmitted to us by our parents. But Nicodemus the son of Nicodemus answered, There hath not been put into our hands the power to punish, for this court hath been appointed only to search and inquire, and not to pronounce sentence. And the chief elder of the court and all the judges were in agreement with the words of Nicodemus ben Nicodemus, and they said, The Sanhedrin of Jerusalem gave us not the power to judge the Rabbi Yeshua ben Joseph, but only to search and inquire. But Simon the Pharisee returned to the argument and said, Then I ask not of this most just court that it pronounce sentence against the Rabbi Yeshua ben Joseph, or that it lay punishment upon him, which power hath not been conferred upon it. But I ask that this just court, having heard the depositions concerning the deeds and words of the Rabbi, and having heard with its own ears that he speaketh with contempt of the tradition of the washing of hands, which is unto us as a law of Moses received on Sinai, I ask that this just court issue a warning to the people against the Rabbi Yeshua ben Joseph, that he performeth not his miracles, and healeth not the sick with the pure power of the Torah, but that he performeth his miracles, and healeth the sick with the impure power of Beelzebub. And again the court was divided in its opinion, for some held that a warning to the people constituted pronouncement of sentence, whereto the court possessed not the power. And others held that inasmuch as the court laid no punishment upon Yeshua ben Joseph, but limited itself to a warning, this was not a sentence, but a ruling of note, which the people needed that they might not be led astray, and for this the court had power, because there was a danger. And the court inclined toward that side which would issue the ruling to the people, and it was so done.